For Germany, taking France wasn't exactly hard. But what if we cranked up the difficulty level?
Huh?
So yeah, we're cranking the difficulty way up, but the outcome is far from guaranteed. The 1930s France was only a shadow of its former power. Meanwhile, the German Reich outmatched it in industrial strength, population, and technology. Can Napoleon's genius make up for such a huge gap? Can he defend France? We're about to find out. How did Napoleon end up in the 20th century? He has absolutely no idea.
Excuse me, where am I?
Either way, his arrival made almost everyone happy. After a quick and very unexpected power takeover,
Wait, what about me? Oh.
so, Bonaparte returned to the Élysée Palace as both president and prime minister.
Wait, president? Why not emperor? Why not emperor? What is president?
The French, as a nation that really enjoys regularly changing its political system, had no problem putting Napoleon back in power once again. However, this beloved French national hobby might later turn out to be fatal for him. So, Napoleon's very first decision was to ban communism.
Communists don't like me, they're probably British. I don't like British.
The decision passed through the government unanimously.
Approved!
Still, not all communists were happy about it. That said, the decision didn't really matter much because Napoleon soon dissolved parliament and proclaimed the birth of the Third French Empire. Napoleon's left-wing opponents began questioning how democratic his decisions really were. 2 days later, all of Paris was already on fire, and the remaining police forces were fleeing in panic in every direction. Soon, peaceful protesters armed with bricks, stones, and hammers marched toward the Élysée Palace. Napoleon, however, had no intention of running.
Give them croissants or something. They'll go home.
In the end, thanks to Napoleon's clever strategy and personal charisma, the riots were successfully crushed. Relative order returned to France. To calm social tensions, Napoleon personally pardoned one of the leaders of the left-wing uprising.
You're joining the army.
But
Field Marshal, send him to the front line.
there is no war.
Relax, boy.
After dealing with internal unrest, Bonaparte could finally focus on foreign policy. Despite his moderate sympathy for Great Britain, years of warfare had taught him several key strategic lessons, and at this point, he had no doubts about who the real enemy was. The German chancellor, whose name is risky on YouTube, wanted Alsace and Lorraine back, the territories that France had taken after World War I. Germans wanted revenge. Worrying news arrived less than 2 months after the emperor's return. On March 7th, Germany broke the Treaty of Versailles and announced the remilitarization of the Rhineland. The whole world looked at France. What would Paris do? Napoleon, however, remained silent, and the French army did not leave its positions. Why? Napoleon could, of course, have tried to strike Germany as early as 1936, hoping they were still unprepared for war. However, France itself was not ready for war. And Bonaparte would likely still feel lost in modern geopolitics, technology, and warfare. It is unlikely that he would seek a war he did not yet understand. Bonaparte was known for his incredible work ethic. He reportedly rarely slept more than 4 hours a day and could work for up to 20 hours straight if the situation required it. He took only short, deep naps. He supposedly once said, "If the news is important, wake me. If the news is trivial, I will forgive you. But if the news is important and you do not wake me, I will have you shot." Napoleon had no doubt that he was the only competent person around him, and that he had to personally keep an eye on everything. Those idiots forgot about the gunpowder sale again. This work ethic would soon prove very useful because the French state was stuck in an economic crisis. The army had nothing to shoot with, and its basic battle tactic was sit in a trench and wait for better times. Bonaparte, immediately after restoring social order, got to work. He ordered the rapid construction of military factories, disbanded static fortress troops, and turned them into mobile units, and began restructuring the French state. Napoleon was a master of maneuver, so he made motorized forces and railways a top priority. And of course, artillery, because nothing excites a real man like a 200mm gun. During the day, he worked. At night, he studied the Great War, analyzed the potential of tanks, and tried to figure out how the hell flying chariots without horses actually worked. Germany's military advantage, however, was so great that to have any real chance, Napoleon had to immediately shift the economy into a wartime mode. But how do you explain a war economy to society without a war? The answer is simple. On July 17, 1936, General Francisco Franco rebelled against the left-wing government. The Civil War would last almost 3 years and end with a nationalist victory. If Bonaparte had been leading France back then, history could have gone differently. Napoleon had some very real PTSD from long, annoying wars against Spain and Wellington. Those campaigns, however, taught him one key lesson. Fighting on more than one front is exhausting.
I don't like communists, but I also don't like being surrounded on three sides.
Franco was supported by Germany and Italy, and Napoleon didn't like that. The Spanish government agreed to a French intervention in exchange for a non-aggression pact and economic benefits. A lightning strike by the French army against the Spanish nationalist forces shocked the entire world. Germany and Italy said, "We will declare war." They didn't declare war. Meanwhile, the French army, commanded by Napoleon himself, crushed Franco's main forces in a rapid campaign that lasted barely a month, gaining valuable combat experience. After this spectacular victory, support for the emperor skyrocketed. Threats from Germany and Italy, meanwhile, gave Napoleon an excuse to switch the economy to war mode. Although it is hard to speculate how a war with Bonaparte would have played out, one thing is certain: Napoleon would not have been a big fan of appeasement and making concessions to Germany. In the autumn of 1938, Germany demanded the Sudetenland from Czechoslovakia. Napoleon had a simple answer.
Sure, but then we take Berlin and you're completely
In our scenario, Germany concentrated most of its forces on the border with Czechoslovakia, planning to quickly crush the defenders. They did not believe the French were capable of launching a major offensive. After all, they had built all those bunkers for a reason, and probably not for attacking. Napoleon, however, had no intention of waiting in a trench. He announced a rapid mobilization. Bonaparte decided to go all in. His next move was extremely risky, which, of course, was exactly how he liked it. Within 2 weeks, French armored and motorized forces developed over the past 2 years reached the Belgian border. Neutral Belgium was given 12 hours to respond to the ultimatum. Either allow the French army to pass through its territory, or French tanks would go through anyway. There was no reply, and the French entered Belgium. The Belgian army was caught by surprise and paralyzed by political chaos. Under pressure from pro-French politicians and the king, Belgium offered almost no resistance, aside from a few minor incidents. At the same time, Germany could not fully break through Czech fortifications. Surprised by the French movements, German command rushed to move troops west to defend the border. Exhausted by heavy losses from the Luftwaffe and German artillery, the Czech army gained some breathing room. Napoleon did not wait. He launched an armored spearhead toward Liège-Aachen-Cologne, aiming at a weak part of the German defenses. He knew that if his army crossed the Rhine and reached the Ruhr, Germany's industrial heart, the war could end in disaster for the Reich. Initially, only the Luftwaffe slowed Napoleon, inflicting heavy losses on French planes. But soon, logistics became the bigger problem. Supply lines couldn't keep up with Bonaparte's insane pace, forcing the French to slow down. Meanwhile, just as important, the diplomatic game is heating up. The Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, Neville Chamberlain, is furious at Napoleon for sabotaging the idea of a Munich peace conference. The French invasion of Belgium causes a huge diplomatic crisis. Chamberlain is not exactly known for his warlike nature, but he decides to impose economic sanctions on France. In response, Napoleon sends a dispatch to London, expressing his deep respect and admiration for the Prime Minister's courage and warmly sending regards to his entire family.
Wait, what did you just say, you little French?
Meanwhile, Italy, unprepared for war and surprised by the French successes, decides not to support Germany for now and see what happens. 2 more countries want to join the fight against Germany: the USSR, friendly with Czechoslovakia, and Poland. Poland isn't exactly Germany's biggest fan, but isn't thrilled either. The problem is that to reach Germany, the Soviets would have to pass through Polish lands. And, generally speaking, if you're a country, you really don't want the Red Army marching through you. It is difficult to say what would happen, but for the sake of simplicity, let us assume a positive outcome for the French. After weeks of pressure, persuasion, and very optimistic Soviet promises that they might actually leave someday, Poland agrees to let the USSR march through. Poland also launches an offensive on the lightly defended Königsberg, while the Soviets begin mobilizing their army. This turn of events is disastrous for Germany. Most of its reserves have to be rushed east immediately. Napoleon, meanwhile, wastes no time and attempts to break through the Rhine line. At this point, I need to admit something. I've already spent over 40 hours creating this video and making these high-quality graphics, so I decided to speed things up a little and help the Emperor even more. In my version of events, the absolute chaos in Europe causes the Chamberlain government to collapse after a few weeks and power is taken by this goat right here. As a result, the UK joins the war on France's side. That finally seals Germany's fate. Unable to handle a war on so many fronts, cut off from natural resources, experiencing diplomatic isolation, Germany is unable to win the war. After almost 2 years of furious resistance, Mr. H is killed in a coup carried out by his own generals. And the war comes to an end. Would it really have happened like this? Probably not. There are simply too many variables. The French are also quite fortunate in this scenario. Napoleon's return 100 years after his death is also highly unlikely, and I made up this story because I was bored. Let me know your version of this scenario in the comments. And if you enjoyed it, feel free to subscribe.